Hey, did you want an advanced class to play in Dragonflight? Well, look no further because the Evoker, more specifically Preservation, is maybe one of the most complicated kind of in-depth specs that I have had to put my hands on, because I did spend about 45 minutes reading 3 talents trying to understand what the fuck is this spec trying to do. But you don't have to worry about that, because in today's video I will go over pretty much everything you need to know about Preservation, and if it's a spec that you would be interested in going into Dragonflight with what we currently have in the early stages of the alpha. Early stages of the alpha being key because things are subject to change, and they will change, they must change, because goddamn. So keep that in mind, and you know, a pinch of salt in pretty much everything you do. But not when you check our streams on twitch.tv/Marcelian&Flame, since that is where you can catch us do all of this footage live when we test all the new specs and bring you more content here on YouTube for you to enjoy. So check us on twitch.tv/Marcelian&Flame, hit a follow, who knows, maybe a subscribe if you like supporting our content, everything that we do. Thank you. Now let's get into Preservation. The first thing that we will touch upon is the animation of the Preservation, or animations, because it's plural, it's multiple spells, but you might see some similarities between Preservation and Mistweaver Monk and Restoration Druid when it comes to its animation. Obviously, there's 2 different main types of schools of healing, and that's green healing and bronze healing. Green is kind of like the Mistweaver type, Resto Druid type healing, where it's all breaths and blooms and blossoms and stuff, and although I do say it's kind of druidy, it feels sometimes like Resto Shaman in terms of the effect, because it's like some burst healing here and there, which is actually pretty nice, but you do have some HOTS as well. As far as the animations go, Deep Breath, which is, let's say, the green version of the breath, you know, you breathe on people, you heal them, is actually kind of cool. It's very wide, it's a short range, and we'll get into the range as well, but it does heal for a crap ton, and that alongside the blooms and the blossoms, and I cannot remember how many fucking blooms and blossoms it has. It's pretty much all healing is limited to about 5 targets, but it does have some neat interactions when it comes to going deeper into the spec, and we'll get to that in a second. As far as the bronze spells, it's time magic. It's basically what you wanted as a mage to heal your party with time magic and reverse the damage that your party has taken, and that's exactly what you will probably be doing most of the time when you heal with bronze magic. In terms of animation, they're a little bit more subtle because it's not all flashy like green stuff. It kind of happens behind the scenes. There's basically golden glowy stuff. You do have anomaly that you can throw out, and it's like this rotating golden ball that just flies towards your target. You have some HOTS, which don't really have an interesting or amazing essentially animation, and you have a couple of buffs and time reversion and stuff like that, which is actually kind of neat, and we will get to that in a second. Overall, in terms of animation, most likely the most impressive thing that you will be doing visually and that your teammates will see is the green animation stuff. And of course, you can also do some damage with like Fire Breath and Living Flame, and we talked about that in the Devastation spec, but that's a little bit limited in terms of animation that you will be doing. However, it does have in its toolkit all the new technologies for spell effects and all of those pixels happening on your screen, because I don't know, man, I'm not a game designer, I'm not even a programmer. I just press buttons in video games, and that's pretty much it. But we do have to talk about the spec death and the interaction. Listen, jokes aside, obviously it's a new spec, it takes a little while to get into, and that poses a barrier of entry, but that should be seen with excitement, because it's exciting to discover a new spec and how it works. Nobody knows shit at the moment. Sure, everybody can read tooltips, and I think I can read some of the tooltips at the very least, and I managed to heal some people in a couple of dungeons that you're probably gonna be seeing in the screen right now. However, there are some really neat in-depth interactions that will probably require a lot more in-depth look at, and we will be waiting for those amazing theory crafters to actually tell us exactly what's going to happen. But with that out of the way, there are a couple of things that you need to understand, is that there are talent paths similar to all other specs that will play upon certain types of interactions that might not be as straightforward as possible, but hey, if you do get your hands on Preservation, how about you try and experiment and explore this, because even if you get the talent tree wrong, you're still gonna heal for a buttload, probably more than your party needs anyway, because, you know, alpha, Evoker is gonna be overpowered. Just get used to it. It is what it is. A couple of keynotes that you might be interested in is like 3 specific interactions. If you've watched our devastation video, you know we talked about Essence Burst. Essence being the core kind of resource of Evoker, although you do have the mana because you're a healer. Essence as well can be consumed by powerful spells. Spells like Disintegrate, deal damage, or Emerald Blossom, which is a spell that's also available to Devastation. However, with Preservation actually consumes Essence and obviously heals for a crap ton. And it can be buffed with talents to heal more targets, and that's it basically. You do have other Essence spenders depending on what talents you pick, and it's mostly and pretty much everything is about healing, and that's all awesome. I think Spirit Blossom is one of those, which is an interesting spell. Also with the new charge mechanic, where you essentially hold down the button when you press it and you charge it to, with this particular spell, to heal more targets. Obviously, if we're talking about the charges, you have the deep breath as well, which if you charge it, heals for more and more and more, and you can tell it into leaving a very strong hot on your targets, which adds up to an interesting gameplay, because you do have a lot of burst healing up front, and you also have hot healing, which kind of seems similar to Mistweaver and Druid, like I mentioned before. So we'll see exactly how these plays, depending on how the healing and the numbers are tuned, which one is going to be more important. And now with Essence Burst that I mentioned before, is that you have a chance to make the Essence Burst consumers to be actually free, and obviously that plays into the optimization of your spec and using your more powerful spells. And of course, you do have another option, which is Temporal Compression. That's a talent very early in the tree. You'll probably not be able to skip it. And what that does is whenever you cast a bronze spell, you get a stack of a buff that makes your Empower spell charge up 5% faster per stack. And I think it caps at 4. And obviously, once you use an Empower spell like Deep Breath, you will essentially expend that buff and cast it a little bit quicker, which obviously is good because you don't want to spend a lot of time casting, so you can heal your targets. And another interesting talent that you will see further down the road, which it takes a while to get to it, to figure out exactly that it actually matches with the previous two, is Sacral Empowerment. And what this does is that whenever you consume the Temporal Compression with an empowered spell, you gain Essence Burst as well, which is again interesting because there are a lot of neat interactions that happen back to back, so you can actually plan your rotation ahead of time. It's a different kind of planning when it comes to playing a healer spec. It's a little bit different than Resto Druid that prepares hots for a big heal burst, or Discipline Priest that has, you know, damage reduction, bubbles, and prepares for like a big either evangelism or other stuff that Discipline does to give big heals to the party and the raid. So there you go. That's kind of how it works. And there are other abilities as well, and I have to correct myself. I think I've called it Deep Breath too much, but it's actually Dream Breath. Dream Breath is the Dragon Breath that essentially heals your target, while Deep Breath is the DPS one that you have on the other spec as well, where you just fly and blast fire on the targets. But you also have the healing version of that if you want to talent into it, which right now it's a little bit unimpressive in terms of the damage that it does, but it looks fucking amazing. And this is pretty much, we talked a lot about the green version of the healing spells and the playstyle that you can get, but you also have the bronze one, which is maybe what people will be more interested in, since, like I mentioned before, there's been a lot of people that over the years have been wanting that mage healer spec after we've had encounters with like time mages. The most noticeable one might be Elisand, but obviously that's, you know, Nosdormu as well, and all the bronze Dragonflight. And that's kind of how the theme of the time magic goes around. So the most recent one, the more obvious one, is the one that you start with, is Reversion. And that's kind of like Rejuvenation. It just heals over time as a hot. It has a couple of fuel talents that makes it stronger, might give it extra charges and so on. You also have a noticeable one. I'm not going to go into all of them because it might take a while, but you also have Echo, which is again one of the first ones that you unlock in the talent tree, which also consumes an essence, and that duplicates the next healing spell that you cast on the target with a 70% efficiency, I believe. And you do have a talent that can bump that to 100%, which is again really cool. You can actually place 2 reversions on a target and have 2 hots ticking at the same time, which is very, very neat. Stasis is probably one of the capstones at the very bottom, and I think it's the middle one. That's probably one of the coolest capstones you'll ever see. And what Stasis does is, we've talked about it, if you haven't seen when we disclosed the abilities back on Thursday last week, I believe. Stasis essentially stores your next 3 healer spells that you do. So you press stasis, you get a buff, nothing happens. You cast 3 healing spells, whatever those spells will be, and then stasis can be activated again. And once you activate it, you will cast those 3 spells again on the same target, and so on. Obviously, you don't go through the cast times if you empower a spell or if you do anything like that. So if you cast, let's say, Dream Breath, that will funnel into your stasis charge, you will just let out a Dragon Breath in front of you. I am still not sure if the healing that Dragon Breath will let out is the fully empowered heal from the charge, because numbers are not showing right now on alpha, so it's kind of hard to gauge. Plus, we don't have DPS and HPS meters, but it's safe to assume that you blast with pretty much all your power and you replicate all the healings again and again. And this again goes into planning your heals and knowing that when you press stasis, the exact same heals roll out. So obviously you don't want to waste healing, overcap healing or anything like that. So you want to be efficient, and efficiency can potentially make a big difference between good preservation players and amazing preservation players. And last but not least, probably the most overpowered talent that I have seen as a main tank in the kit of preservation, which is bonkers. And let's just say alpha numbers are alpha numbers. But what that talent does is, first of all, called time dilation. It's accessible pretty early into the talent tree, and you put it on a target, and that target for, I think, baseline 8 seconds, unless they change it, takes 30%, like the 30% damage that it takes will be staggered or in 8 seconds for as long as the buff lasts on the target, which means that you basically get stagger. So you can put it on a tank, clearly, that's supposed to be taking some tank busters, and that tank essentially turns into a Brewmaster for 8 seconds, which is crazy good. If you think of a tank like Prot Warrior, which takes like minimal melee damage, you're also really beefy, you have stagger on top of that, you will be immortal. It is crazy. And obviously you can buff that. You can buff it with a choice talent, lower down the tree, which you can either make it last a little bit longer, I think 2 seconds longer, or make it reduce 70% of the damage. Not actually reduce, but stagger that 70% damage over the course of those 8 seconds, which is nuts, I gotta tell you. I don't know if the numbers will remain the same. It is pretty strong. It's on a 1 minute cooldown. I don't know. It's cool though. It's really cool because it adds concepts to supporting your group that aren't yet in the game, because what most healers do is either heal you or give you damage reduction, pretty much all of them, or damage absorption. So this kind of mechanic we haven't seen in a while. And obviously you have a big heal, which is on, I think, on a 4 minute cooldown that you can talent into, that I, for the life of me, I think it's Rewind. I cannot remember exactly the name. And once you press it, you reverse the 50% of the damage that everybody took and heal them up. And if it's not used in a raid, its effect is even stronger. And I accidentally pressed it in a dungeon and everybody was full HP instead of actually dying, and that was amazing. I felt like I contributed. So that was really, really cool to see and feel. Outside of that, I talked about the utility part of the healer. Yes, sure. You can fill people's HP bars. That's amazing. But you also have a fuck ton of utility, and most likely this is going to make preservation one of the top healers. Even if the numbers might be nerfed into lower numbers, the utility is amazing. And you've seen the videos, you know what it does. You know that it has the landslide, which roots everything. That's pretty much available to Devastation as well. And probably the most interesting spell that you have seen is Fly With Me, which is fucking hilarious. Fly With Me is accessible in the general talent tree. Obviously, Devastation can have it as well. However, it's closer to the healer side of the talent, so I'm not sure if you can get to it with Devastation without sacrificing DPS talents, but you can get Fly With Me. And what that does is, if you target, right now the way it works is you kind of have to have a targeted ally, so it has to be your target. You cannot target the boss. I don't know if there are any macros that was going to change this, but you target your ally, and then you select the area around you in I think in a 40-yard range, and you fly to your ally, pick your ally up, and fly them to the designated area, which is particularly good. It can help very immobile classes like DKs or Paladins or anything like that to get from point A to point B. I'm not 100% sure if you can jump or fly over ground effects like fire. That will normally prevent you from taking damage, because that would be freaking insane. And especially this is good if you have platform type encounters like we've had, let's say in Nathria. Denathrius is one of those examples where you had mobs on platforms. you can get to platforms. You can probably get there on your own without the help of another person, because you do have stuff like Zephyr, which obviously moves your entire raid, lets you hover your entire raid and get movement speed. You also have Hover as a spell, which gives you movement speed and you can cast while moving and you get a little bit of burst of speed, and you float, which leads me to believe that you're not gonna, you know, fall or essentially touch the ground, again kind of hinting that ground effects will not affect you. Although during the questing I couldn't see if this applied, since I still took lava damage when I was hovering above lava. So we'll see exactly how this plays out once the expansion launches. And of course you can also DPS as a healer. Thankfully, with the exception of one talent in the preservation tree that makes it so your fire breath heals for 80% of damage dealt to one of your nearby ally, which is actually pretty good. You don't really have a lot of interactions with your damage that transforms into healing like you would have, I don't know, Mistweaver or maybe Glimmer Paladin or Discipline Priest, for instance. So you probably won't have to deal damage unless you want to, which that's actually particularly great. You can also avoid the talent that I just mentioned that transforms the damage from your fire breath into healing, and you can keep on doing whatever you want to do. Obviously, Living Flame, your most basic spell that both specs have, can deal damage and also heal your target. And you have a specific talent that's actually really cool if you like to also deal the dragony damage stuff, because you do have fire breath as preservation, that's also baseline, but you also have a talent in the general Evoker tree, which is called Scarlet Adaptation. And what that talent does is it stores a portion of your healing on targets and it can convert it into damage on your next Living Flame. And so far, the way the numbers are scaled is that it can store up to double the baseline damage of Living Flame. So if you store it to max, you can essentially cast a Living Flame that does triple the normal damage, which is pretty crazy. This is actually a much cooler part of dealing damage as a healer, since you kind of have to heal to be able to deal some damage as well, which is kind of like switching it around, right? You have to heal to do some damage. This is only one talent. I would have loved to see more of these interactions, like, you know, after you heal a whole bunch, you just explode with more damage. I don't know if anything like this will change, but Scarlet Adaptation is maybe one of my favorite mechanics that a healer can have, where I can be rewarded for healing okay and then just blasting one spell really hard. I don't have to heal 24/7. I'm sorry, I don't have to DPS 24/7, but when I do, I just blast it every now and again. That's fine. Every now and again, I can slap really hard. And this is pretty much what preservation is at first glance. There are a couple of talents that don't work. For instance, I feel like it's Leaping Flames, which doesn't work for devastation either, which makes Living Flame cleave. That could be really cool. From the tooltip, it sounds like it can also cleave on the healing effect, so cleave to all of your allies, so that could be particularly great. And if you pair it with Scarlet Adaptation, it can cleave for a lot of damage, although you cannot do this continuously, like other healers can just pump out damage continuously. That's actually maybe a good thing, since you're not incentivized to constantly deal damage. And I do have to mention a couple of other things that have been fixed that you might have heard or seen. When you charge your abilities right now, at the end of the charge of the ability, there used to be a global cooldown that they took out, making the rotation feel more smooth, and thank fucking god, devs. That was an amazing pickup. It got fixed overnight. I didn't mention in the devastation video, but here we are. Other than that, the spec is really fun. It actually made me reconsider if I'm going to main it or not, more so than the DPS spec, the healer spec that is. It's complicated, it's convoluted, it has some depth. It's not that hard. Listen, maybe I'm overreacting right now. It's not hard to pick up, it's fun to pick up because there's so many cool little things that you can do that you'll likely not get bored whatsoever. So hope you enjoyed the preservation lookup. We're gonna have more videos in the coming days on our channel on Marcelian&Flame. Clearly you're here, so if you enjoyed it, hit a like, subscribe, enable those notifications so you can see all the videos that we have, and don't forget our stream, twitch.tv/Marcelian&Flame, where you can catch us play these live. Thank you to our Patreon for supporting our channel, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye!
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.